She brought cupcakes to the office every Monday, stayed late to help with projects that weren't hers, never said no to covering someone's shift. Everyone loved her. At her funeral, 300 people came, and as they filed past her casket, almost every single one of them said the same thing. I didn't really know her. She had spent 58 years making sure everyone around her felt seen, heard, and cared for. And in return, she became invisible. Not because people were cruel, but because she never let anyone see her long enough to love her back. Being too nice doesn't make you loved, it makes you useful. And there's a devastating difference. If you've ever been called too nice, if you've ever felt like you're constantly giving and never receiving, if you've ever wondered why you feel so alone despite being surrounded by people who seem to care about you, this video is going to change everything. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't just psychology, it's permission. Permission to finally understand that you're not broken, you're not weak, and you're not selfish for wanting something different. Here's what most people don't understand about being too nice. It's not about having a big heart. It's not about being generous or compassionate or kind. Being too nice is about having a shattered sense of self. It's about living in a constant state of hypervigilance, where you're scanning every room for signs of disapproval, calibrating your personality in real time to make sure nobody gets uncomfortable. It's exhausting, it's lonely, and for many people, it's slowly killing them. The thing is, nobody wakes up one day and decides to become a people pleaser. Nobody sits down and thinks, you know what, I'm going to spend my entire life abandoning myself to make other people comfortable. It doesn't happen that way. Being too nice is something that gets programmed into you, usually when you're too young to understand what's happening. And by the time you're old enough to recognize the pattern, it feels like it's just who you are, like it's your personality, your nature. But it's not. It's a survival strategy. And today, we're going to dismantle it together. I want you to understand something right from the start. This video isn't about becoming mean. It's not about building walls or shutting people out or suddenly becoming selfish. It's about learning the difference between kindness and niceness. Because those two things, they sound the same, but they're describing completely opposite phenomena. Kindness comes from wholeness. Kindness is an overflow of genuine care that doesn't cost you your self-respect. Kindness can say no. Kindness can disappoint people. Kindness can set boundaries. Niceness, on the other hand, comes from fear. Niceness is a performance. It's a strategy designed to keep you safe by making sure nobody ever gets upset with you. And the cost of that strategy is your entire sense of self. So let me take you back. Let me tell you about a child who learned to read rooms before she could read books. She was 7 when she discovered that her mother's mood determined whether the house felt safe or suffocating. If mom was happy, there was music playing in the kitchen. There was laughter. There were spontaneous trips for ice cream on Tuesday afternoons for no reason at all. But if mom was angry, and she was angry a lot, the air in the house got thick. Everyone tiptoed. Dad would disappear into the garage and tinker with things that didn't need fixing. Her older brother would lock himself in his room with his headphones on, drowning out the tension with music turned up too loud. But this little girl, she didn't have those options. She was too young to escape, too young to hide. So instead, she became something else. She became a thermometer. And then, gradually, she became a thermostat. She learned that if she could make mom laugh, the storm would pass. If she could anticipate what mom needed before mom even knew she needed it, everything would be okay. She learned to read micro-expressions, the slight tightening around her mother's eyes that meant frustration was building, the particular tone of voice that signaled danger, the way her mother's shoulders would tense before an explosion. And she got good at it. Really good. By the time she was 12, she was everyone's favorite. Teachers loved her because she was so helpful and never caused problems. Friends' parents loved her because she was polite and respectful and always said thank you. She became the kid that adults pointed to when they wanted to complain about other children. See, why can't you be more like her? She never causes any trouble. By 25, she was a ghost. She'd been so busy becoming what everyone needed that she'd forgotten to become anyone at all. She had friends. Dozens of them, but none of them really knew her. She had relationships, but they felt like performances, where she was constantly monitoring her own behavior, making sure she was being the right amount of interested, the right amount of available, the right amount of fun. And the worst part, the part that made her feel like she was losing her mind, was that she couldn't even remember what she actually liked anymore. What music she genuinely enjoyed when nobody was around to judge her taste. What she wanted to eat when she didn't have to consider someone else's preferences. What she believed about anything that actually mattered. One day, her therapist asked her a simple question. Just 4 words. What do you want? And she burst into tears. Not delicate tears, not pretty crying. She sobbed. Deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere she didn't even know existed inside her. Not because the question was cruel, not because her therapist was being harsh, but because she genuinely, truly had no idea how to answer. The question terrified her, because wanting something meant having a self, and having a self meant being visible. And being visible meant being vulnerable to rejection, to disappointment, to the possibility that who she really was wouldn't be enough. Here's what this story reveals, and I need you to really hear this. 2 nice people aren't born, they're made. And they're made in environments where being yourself carried too much risk. When a child learns that their emotional expression causes chaos or pain or withdrawal of love, they learn to preemptively manage everyone else's feelings. They become emotional janitors, constantly cleaning up messes they didn't make, absorbing toxicity so others don't have to feel it. This isn't virtue. This isn't generosity. This is trauma. And it's one of the most invisible forms of trauma we experience because everyone applauds you for it. Everyone benefits from it. Nobody sees the cost.
Now I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you've spent 30 years of your life wearing a costume. Every single morning, you wake up and you put it on. It's heavy. It's uncomfortable. The fabric is scratchy and it doesn't fit quite right, but you've worn it for so long that you barely notice the discomfort anymore. It's just part of your morning routine, like brushing your teeth or making coffee. People recognize you in this costume. They like you in it. They've come to rely on you showing up in it. They know what to expect from you when you're wearing it. One day, you decide to take it off, just for an hour, just to see what happens. Just to remember what it feels like to wear your own skin. You tell a friend you can't help them move this weekend, not because you have other plans, not because you're sick or busy or out of town, but simply because you don't want to. You don't over-explain, you don't apologize 17 times, you don't offer 3 alternative dates when you might be available. You just say, "I can't make it, but I hope it goes smoothly." And something shocking happens, something you weren't prepared for. Your friend says, "No problem, thanks anyway," and moves on with their life, just like that. They don't get angry, they don't accuse you of being selfish, they don't send you a long text about how disappointed they are. They just say, "Okay," and they call someone else. But you spiral. Your heart starts racing, your mind starts spinning. You're convinced they're secretly mad, convinced they're talking about you to other people, convinced that this is the moment they realize you're not actually a good person. You check your phone obsessively, looking for signs of passive aggression in their texts. You consider sending a follow-up message, an apology, an explanation. Maybe you could help next weekend instead. Maybe you could just come for an hour. This is the paradox of the too nice person. You've spent years, decades even, protecting yourself from a reaction that almost never comes. You've been bracing for anger, rejection, abandonment, punishment. And when it doesn't happen, when people just accept your boundary and move on, you don't feel relief. You feel confused, disoriented. Because if people don't punish you for having boundaries, what were you protecting yourself from all along? The answer is a ghost, a memory, a wound that healed on the outside but never on the inside. You're not responding to the present moment. You're not responding to the actual person in front of you. You're responding to the past, to the parent who gave you the silent treatment when you didn't behave perfectly, to the sibling who mocked you for crying, to the friend in middle school who dropped you the moment you couldn't do them a favor, to the teacher who made you feel like your worth was directly proportional to how helpful and agreeable you were. And here's the saddest part. Every time you abandon yourself to avoid a conflict that probably won't even happen, you're confirming the original lie. The lie that told you that who you really are isn't enough. The lie that said love is conditional and must be earned through flawlessness, through service, through erasing the inconvenient parts of yourself. Let me tell you about the two versions of love that exist in this world. The first kind of love says, I love you because you're useful, because you make my life easier, because you don't challenge me or complicate things, because you're low maintenance and agreeable and I never have to think about what you need. You just handle it. You just figure it out. You never make me feel bad or guilty or like I'm not doing enough. This kind of love is transactional. It's conditional. It's based on what you provide, not who you are. The second kind of love says, I love you because you're you. Even the messy parts, even the inconvenient parts, even when you disagree with me or set a boundary I don't like or tell me a truth I don't want to hear. Even when you're grumpy or tired or going through something and can't show up the way you usually do. This kind of love sees you, really sees you. Not just the performance, not just the helpful version, but the whole, complicated, contradictory, beautifully human version. If you're too nice, you've spent your entire life collecting the first kind of love and calling it connection. You've surrounded yourself with people who like your performance but don't know your soul. And deep down, you know this. You know that if you stopped performing, if you got sick or depressed or just too tired to keep managing everyone's emotions, some of these people would vanish. They wouldn't be cruel about it. They wouldn't make a big dramatic exit. They'd just slowly fade away. Stop calling, stop texting, stop including you. Not because they're bad people, but because the relationship was never really about you. It was about what you could do for them. And that knowing, that quiet awareness that you're surrounded by people but still fundamentally alone, that's a loneliness that no amount of surface-level connection can fix. It's the loneliness of being invisible while everyone thinks they see you. It's the loneliness of being praised for qualities that aren't even real, while the real you is locked away somewhere, atrophying from lack of use. So how did we get here? Why do some people learn to set boundaries naturally, instinctively, while others spend their entire lives bleeding out through tiny acts of self-betrayal? The answer lies in something called the fawn response. You've probably heard of fight, flight, or freeze, the ways our nervous system responds to threat. When a predator appears, we either attack it, run from it, or play dead. But there's a fourth response that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and it's the one that creates chronic people pleasers. It's called fawn. Fawning is when you respond to threat by appeasing, accommodating, and people-pleasing. It's most common in people who grew up in environments where fighting back was dangerous, where running away was impossible, and where freezing just got you hurt worse. So you learned a different strategy. You learned to make yourself useful, indispensable, pleasant, agreeable, non-threatening. You learned to read the person who had power over you and give them exactly what they wanted before they even had to ask. And it worked. It kept you safer than the alternatives. It reduced the violence or the yelling or the emotional withdrawal. It helped you survive. This is adaptive brilliance. If you were a child in an unstable, unpredictable, or emotionally volatile environment, fawning likely kept you safer than any other option available to you. The problem is that your nervous system doesn't know the danger is over. It's still scanning for threats, still trying to manage everyone's emotions so things don't explode, still believing that your survival depends on being easy, helpful, and agreeable. Here's what this means for you right now in your adult life. Your too nice behavior isn't a character flaw. It's not a weakness. It's not something you should be ashamed of. It's a nervous system stuck in survival mode. And this is crucial to understand because you can't think your way out of a physiological response. You can't just decide to stop people-pleasing and expect your body to cooperate. Your body is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It's trying to keep you safe the only way it knows how.
Let me explain something about self-betrayal, because this is where things get really dark. Every time you say yes when you mean no, something inside you breaks. Not dramatically, not all at once. It's not like a bone snapping or glass shattering. It's more like erosion, like a riverbank that gets worn away slowly, imperceptibly, until one day there's nothing left to hold the water and everything floods. There's a moment, and maybe you don't even consciously notice it, where you feel your real desire, your real opinion, your real limit, and then you watch yourself override it. You watch yourself smile and say, "Sure, no problem, I'd love to help." And in that moment, you're teaching yourself something devastating. You're teaching yourself that your feelings don't matter, that your limits aren't real, that the version of you that exists underneath the performance is too dangerous, too difficult, too much to be allowed in the world. Over time, this creates a split. There's the you that exists in the world, the one that everyone sees and likes and relies on, agreeable, accommodating, easy to be around. And then there's the you that exists underneath, the one who's resentful, exhausted, unseen, and screaming silently behind a smile. These two versions of you are at war, and the tragedy is that neither one feels real anymore. Here's the devastating part. The more you betray yourself, the less you trust yourself. You stop knowing what you want because you've overridden your desires so many times that the signal gets weaker and weaker until it's just static. You stop believing your feelings are valid because you've invalidated yourself thousands of times. You start to think, maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe everyone else is fine with this, and I'm the one who's broken. This is how people-pleasing becomes a cage. You're not just managing other people's reactions anymore. You're managing your own inner collapse. You're trying to hold together a sense of self that's been shattered into so many pieces you can't even remember what the original shape was supposed to be. The psychological term for this is self-concept fragmentation. You become multiple versions of yourself depending on who you're with, and none of those versions feel fully real. You're a different person with your family than you are with your friends, a different person at work than you are at home. And when you're finally alone, you're not anyone at all. Now I need to tell you something uncomfortable, something you might not want to hear, but desperately need to understand. If you're chronically too nice, you probably have a lot of takers in your life. People who take your time, your energy, your resources, your emotional labor, and give very little back. People who call you when they need something, but are mysteriously unavailable when you need them. People who treat your boundaries like suggestions. People who make you feel guilty for having needs. This isn't because you're unlucky. It's not because the universe is conspiring against you or because you just happen to attract bad people. It's because healthy people, people with good boundaries themselves, can sense when someone else has boundaries. And they respect that. They don't push, they don't test, they don't try to see how much they can get away with. But people with poor boundaries themselves, people who are entitled or manipulative or emotionally immature, they're drawn to people pleasers like moths to a flame. Why? Because you don't push back. Because you'll tolerate behavior that others wouldn't. Because you're so afraid of conflict, so terrified of being seen as difficult or mean or selfish, that you'll endure mistreatment rather than risk confrontation. You'll accept breadcrumbs and call it friendship. You'll accept one-sided relationships and call it loyalty. You'll accept being used and call it being needed. And here's the twist that nobody talks about. The more you give to these people, the less they respect you. Not consciously necessarily. They're not sitting around thinking about how little they value you. But unconsciously, people equate boundaries with self-respect. When you have none, when you're infinitely accommodating and endlessly available, they wonder why. And they fill in the blank with, maybe you're not worth respecting. Maybe your time isn't valuable. Maybe your feelings don't matter as much as other people's. This is not your fault. I want to be really clear about that. The fact that you've attracted takers is evidence that you learned to survive by making yourself useful. And now you're surrounded by people who benefited from that survival strategy. But it is your responsibility to change it. Because these people, the ones who only show up when they need something, who get angry when you finally set a boundary, who make you feel guilty for having needs, they were never going to really love you anyway. They were in love with what you could do for them, not who you are. Let me dismantle a word that's been weaponized against you your entire life: selfish. You've been told, directly or indirectly, explicitly or through subtle punishment, that prioritizing your needs is selfish, that setting boundaries is selfish, that saying no is selfish, that taking time for yourself is selfish, that asking for what you want is selfish. And you've internalized this so deeply that even thinking about doing something for yourself triggers a wave of guilt so intense it's physically painful. But here's the truth, and I need you to really let this land. Selfishness is hoarding resources you don't need at the expense of others. Selfishness is demanding that the world revolve around you while contributing nothing. Selfishness is expecting other people to sacrifice themselves for your comfort. Self-care, on the other hand, is stewarding your own humanity so you don't collapse. Self-care is understanding that you're a finite being with real limits and real needs. Self-care is treating yourself with the same basic consideration you'd give to literally anyone else. You know what's actually selfish? Expecting someone to abandon themselves to make you comfortable. Punishing people for having needs. Demanding that others contort themselves to accommodate your emotional fragility while offering them nothing in return. But nobody calls that selfish, do they? They call it, you're just being too sensitive, or you're overreacting, or why are you making this such a big deal? The reframe I want you to walk away with is this: you're not being selfish by setting boundaries. You're being responsible. You're being honest. You're being an adult who understands that you can't pour from an empty cup, and that martyrdom isn't a love language, it's a pathology. It's a sickness that we've dressed up as virtue. And here's the lesson that's going to sting the most. The people who get angry at your boundaries are the exact people who benefited from you not having any. Read that again. Let it sink in. When you start setting boundaries, when you start saying no, when you start prioritizing your own needs and well-being, some people will be surprised but supportive. They'll say, "Good for you, I'm proud of you." They'll adjust, they'll respect it. They'll still want to be in your life even though you're no longer infinitely available. But some people will get angry. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed, and not in a good way. They'll accuse you of being dramatic or difficult or not the person they thought you were. They'll make you feel guilty. They'll tell you that the old you was so much better, so much easier to be around. They'll weaponize your past against you, reminding you of all the times you said yes, using your own history of self-abandonment as evidence that you should continue abandoning yourself. Pay attention to who those people are, because they're revealing something crucial. They weren't in relationship with you. They were in relationship with what you could do for them. They didn't love you. They loved your service, your availability, your willingness to sacrifice yourself. And now that you're no longer willing to do that, now that you're insisting on being treated like a whole person with needs and limits, they're upset. Not because you're being unreasonable, but because they're losing access to something they never should have had in the first place. This is the hardest lesson, and it's one that breaks people's hearts every single day. Not everyone will survive your healing. Some people are only in your life because you were small, because you were manageable, because you didn't ask for anything. And when you grow, when you start taking up space, when you start insisting on reciprocity and respect, they'll have to decide whether they want to grow with you or go find someone else to stay small for them. Let them go. Not with cruelty, not with vindictiveness, not with a dramatic speech or a social media post about toxic people, but with clarity. With sadness maybe, because endings are sad even when they're necessary. But with absolute clarity that your healing is not up for negotiation, that you're not going back to being small, that you'd rather be alone and whole than surrounded and shattered. So what do you actually do about all of this? If niceness is a trauma response, if self-betrayal is slowly killing you, if you're surrounded by people who only love your performance, what's the way forward? Let me give you some practices that are actually doable. Not overwhelming, not perfectionist, just simple, concrete things you can start doing today. First, the pause principle. Here's your new rule, and I want you to commit to this right now. When someone asks you for something, you don't answer immediately. Even if the request is small, even if you know you'll probably say yes, even if it's someone you love and trust, you pause. You create space between the request and your response. You say, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," or "I need to think about that," or simply, "Can I answer you tomorrow?" This is going to feel excruciating at first. Your nervous system is going to scream at you. You're going to feel like you're being difficult, like you're inconveniencing people, like you're breaking some unspoken social contract. Good. That discomfort is the feeling of you mattering. That anxiety is your old programming fighting for its life. Sit with it. Breathe through it. Don't give in to the urge to immediately make everything comfortable again. This pause does two crucial things. First, it gives your nervous system time to move out of fawn mode and into actual choice. When someone asks you for something and you immediately say yes, you're not choosing. You're reacting. You're running an old program. But when you pause, When you give yourself even just 24 hours, you allow your prefrontal cortex to come back online. You allow yourself to actually consider whether this is something you want to do, something you have capacity for, something that aligns with your values and priorities. Second, it trains the people around you that you're not a vending machine. You're not a resource to be extracted from. You're a person who has needs, limits, and the right to consider before committing. And healthy people will respect this. They'll appreciate your honesty. They'll prefer your authentic yes over your resentful yes. The people who get irritated by your pause, who pressure you for an immediate answer, who make you feel guilty for needing time to think, those are exactly the people you need boundaries with. Second practice, the resentment audit. I want you to get a piece of paper right now, or open a note on your phone, and I want you to write down everything you're currently doing for other people that makes you feel resentful. Everything. The carpool you're driving twice a week because someone asked once and now it's just assumed. The emotional labor you're doing for a friend who never asks how you're doing. The extra projects at work that aren't in your job description but somehow always end up on your desk. The family role you've taken on where you're always the mediator, always the one who keeps the peace, always the one who hosts holidays and remembers birthdays and makes sure everyone feels included. Write it all down. Don't censor yourself. Don't minimize it. Don't tell yourself it's not that bad or other people have it worse. Just write down everything that, when you think about doing it, makes you feel heavy, tired, resentful, trapped. Now, next to each item, I want you to ask yourself one question. Am I doing this from genuine desire or from fear of disappointing someone? Be brutally honest. If the answer is fear, if you're doing it because you're afraid of what will happen if you stop, afraid of conflict or guilt or being seen as selfish, mark it. Here's the hard part. Pick one, just one. Not all of them at once. That's a recipe for overwhelm and failure. But pick one thing on that list and either stop doing it or renegotiate the terms. Maybe you tell your carpool that you can only do Tuesdays now, not Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maybe you tell your friend that you need your relationship to be more reciprocal and you're not available for 90-minute venting sessions anymore. Maybe you tell your boss that you can't take on additional projects without something else coming off your plate. And when the guilt comes, and it will, in waves, when you feel like a terrible person, when you're convinced you're being selfish and mean and letting everyone down, I want you to say this to yourself. My worth is not determined by how useful I am. My worth is not determined by how useful I am. Say it until you start to believe it. Third practice, practice micro boundaries in low-stakes situations. You don't start with the big stuff. You don't go from 0 to, I'm going no contact with my narcissistic parent. That's setting yourself up to fail. You start small, tiny, almost invisible. Someone asks where you want to eat. Instead of saying, I don't care, you pick a place. Even if you don't care that much, even if you'd be happy with anything, you practice having a preference and stating it. Someone makes a joke at your expense. Instead of laughing along, instead of being a good sport, you say calmly, I didn't find that funny. Someone asks you to stay late at work again. You say, not today. No explanation, no justification, just not today. These feel enormous when you're not used to them. Your heart will pound. Your face will flush. You'll feel like you just did something terribly wrong. But you're training yourself. You're teaching your nervous system that you can assert a preference, set a limit, express a need without the world ending. And here's what you'll discover. Most of the time, nothing bad happens. People adjust. They say, okay, and they move on. The disaster you're bracing for, the anger and rejection and abandonment you're expecting, almost never comes. Fourth practice, the self-compassion intervention. Every time you catch yourself people-pleasing, every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you sacrifice your own needs to make someone else comfortable, don't shame yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't add self-criticism to the already painful experience of self-betrayal. Instead, pause. Put your hand on your heart if you're somewhere you can do that, and say this to yourself, either out loud or internally. This is what safety used to look like for me. I learned to do this to survive. I'm not bad or weak or broken. I'm scared, and I'm learning a new way. This is so crucial. If you berate yourself every time you slip back into old patterns, you're just continuing the cycle of self-betrayal. You're still treating yourself like you're not allowed to be human, like you're not allowed to make mistakes or struggle or take time to change. Healing from people-pleasing requires that you extend to yourself the exact compassion you've been giving to everyone else. It requires that you become the person who says, "It's okay. You're doing your best. I'm proud of you for trying."
Fifth practice, find one person who can hold your whole truth. You need at least one relationship in your life where you don't perform. One person who knows the real you, the messy, uncertain, tired, angry, complicated, contradictory you. This might be a therapist. It might be a best friend who's earned your trust over many years. It might be a partner who's proven through consistent action that they're not going anywhere. And with that person, practice radical honesty. Practice saying, "I'm not okay." Practice admitting that you're resentful. Practice crying. Practice being difficult. Practice showing up without your armor, without your mask, without your careful calibration of how much is too much to share. Because you need to experience what it feels like when someone doesn't leave. You need proof that your real self, the uncensored version, is lovable. You need evidence that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of care. And you can't get that evidence if you're always performing. You have to risk being real with someone and discovering that they stay. So here's where we've been together in these last 20 minutes. You learned that being too nice isn't about having too much love. It's about having too much fear. Fear that if people see the real you, they'll leave. Fear that if you're not useful, you're worthless. Fear that if you take up space, there won't be room for you in the world. You discovered that niceness and kindness are not the same thing. That the version of generosity you've been performing, the version everyone applauds and rewards, is actually a form of self-abandonment. It's self-harm disguised as virtue. You explored the origins of people-pleasing, how it starts in childhood as an adaptive response to threat, how it's a survival strategy that was once brilliant and necessary, but now keeps you trapped in half-lives and invisible relationships with people who don't really know you. You learned about the fawn response, about self-betrayal spirals, about why you attract takers, about how the people who get angriest at your boundaries are revealing exactly who they are. You learned that you're not too much, you're not too sensitive, and you're not selfish for wanting to be seen and loved for who you actually are. And most importantly, you learned that you have a choice. Maybe not an easy choice, maybe not a comfortable choice, but a choice nonetheless. You can keep performing, you can keep being nice, you can keep sacrificing yourself on the altar of everyone else's comfort. Or you can start the slow, difficult, sacred work of becoming real. Here's what I want you to remember when this gets hard, because it will get hard. There will be days when setting a boundary feels like jumping off a cliff. Days when you slip back into old patterns and feel like you failed. Days when you wonder if it's worth it, if maybe it was easier to just stay small and safe and liked. You were never too nice. You were too afraid to be real. And the people who love you really love you. Not the performance, but the person underneath. They're waiting to meet the version of you that you've been hiding. That version isn't far away.
It's not on the other side of some massive transformation or years of therapy or a complete personality overhaul. It's right here, right now, underneath the performance. It's been there the whole time, just waiting for permission to exist. And every time you choose honesty over harmony, every time you feel the discomfort of mattering and don't run from it, every time you set a boundary or state a preference or admit you're not okay, you're meeting yourself again. You're coming home to yourself, piece by piece, breath by breath. It won't be fast. It won't be linear. There will be setbacks and stumbles and moments where you feel like you're back at square one. But here's the promise I can make you. The life waiting for you on the other side of people-pleasing is one where you don't have to be perfect to be loved, where you can be tired, or grumpy, or wrong, or inconvenient and still belong, where people know your real name, not just the character you've been playing. That's the life you deserve. Not because you've earned it through years of service, not because you've finally become good enough, but because you're human. And being human, with all its mess and contradiction and complication, is enough. It's always been enough. You are not a supporting character in someone else's story. You're the protagonist of your own, and it's time to start acting like it. If this video resonated with you, if you saw yourself in these stories, if something shifted inside you, even just a little, leave a comment. Tell me which part hit hardest. Tell me what you're ready to stop doing. Tell me what boundary you're finally ready to set. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And I want to hear it. And if you want more content that explores the hidden psychology of how we survive, how we hide, and how we finally bravely start to heal, subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, not because I'm trying to manipulate you with guilt or obligation, but because you deserve regular reminders that you're not broken, that you're not too much, that you're just finally ready to stop performing and start living. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me with these 20 minutes of your life. And most of all, thank you for starting to believe, even just a little bit, that you matter. Not what you do for others, not how useful you are, not how nice or agreeable or easy you are, but you, the real, messy, complicated, beautifully imperfect you. That version has always been enough, and it's time you started believing it.